Welcome to Dog's Red Wine out of Perrysburg, Ohio. Tonight we're going to talk about going to culinary school. We're going to taste a beautiful wine that Jason has chosen, and we're going to eat some aged brie cheese, and we're going to talk about flying planes and all sorts of great stuff with my co-host, Jason. Jason, introduce yourself.
Well, I'm co-producer of the show here, Dog's Red Wine. I guess you're the founder of the company, but co-representative of Dog's Red Wine.
Tell them what you used to do, because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, well,
your last profession.
My profession before getting really involved in high-level video, I've worked with I worked with Dior behind the scenes at Miami Swim Week, which is incredible experience.
I bet.
And really
nice
fun.
Looking ladies.
Yeah, it was incredible. I met everything from people that were just starting out in the industry to Victoria's Secret model, and my focus was, I was a Dior photographer, videographer for Dior, so it was all about the makeup and the behind the scenes stuff like that. Gotcha. So that was cool.
You've never gone to school for
all self-taught, and I think that works out pretty well for most things in life. Is if you're passionate about it, unless
you really can't. When it comes to being good at video, I started making. I think my first. The first thing I filmed was a stop and go video.
Yeah.
Where you shoot a scene, and it was at summer camp, and it was in a corral, and it was two guys racing each other with no horses, and so they were going around and around in the corral, and I was like doing one frame, that kind of thing. But I asked a guy who I actually had gone to school with, and he ended up in the business, and I was like, how did you train yourself, or how did you get trained? He said, I trained myself.
Yeah.
You just have to do it, and then you look at it and you go, that's bad.
Right.
Do it again.
Try a lot of trial and error, unless you're going to be. I spent a lot of time in Los Angeles and Hollywood too, and they have schools out there for high school kids that they come out and they know more coming right out of their high school than I probably ever will know. They're
also you can afford equipment now. When I was in high school, my grandfather gave a pretty decent donation to the school I was going to start a video department.
Yeah.
And $10,000 didn't go very far.
No,
in the 80s, that would buy you like three things.
Right.
And there were no video cameras per se. There was no Best Buy, but there was, you couldn't really even buy a video camera, a handheld handy cam.
Right.
They didn't exist yet.
Right.
Where now the kids, they grab your iPhone, a 4-year-old,
incredible.
And they can edit it and post it to YouTube.
Right.
It's amazing how far we've gone.
Yeah.
But you still need talent.
Right. Yeah.
There's a ton of content out there, no doubt, but there's a ton of crappy content out there as well.
But you asked my profession before I got into video, and it was an airline pilot. So I was an airline pilot for 20 years, flight instructed in small airplanes.
That was the last thing you were doing, was flight instructing, right?
So now I still contract, and I do airline pilot training in the simulators.
That's that big thing you see.
Yeah.
It's like out of Star Wars or something.
Yeah. It's, they're like $10 million pieces of equipment that are. It is a airline.
So when you're looking out of the windows, is there a screen there?
Yeah, 180 degrees. So it's like, but most of the time when you're flying, you're in the clouds.
So it's the most expensive video game on the face of the earth.
Yeah. It's a pretty impressive video game. And
do the training pilots ever freak out?
Oh yeah,
you're not. They can't crash.
Right. So
they get so into it that they think they're going to crash.
And good training is you know, you almost get it down to muscle memory. So they have an engine fire at the most critical point on takeoff. And
is that programmed into it? Are they going to have an engine fire?
Yeah, so that's what I do. And there, as the instructor, I control the weather. I control.
So you're like you throw things at them.
Yeah.
Bird on the wing.
Right. So it's pretty fun, you know. Yeah. And it's good training. And like I said. The pilots will come out of there. They're 4-hour sessions, and they'll come out of the training session, and their back will be sweaty. Yeah, they'll be sweaty, and the simulators are so good that when you select rain, you can see and hear the rain on the windscreen of the airplane. And if you fly into LaGuardia, you look out and you see the stadium, you see the roads, the bridges. Everything is completely accurate, and it's as good as any video game graphic wise. I mean, it's so.
Now, do you ever get tired of playing it?
Well, I'm the one that programs it.
I know, but does it get boring or every time?
No, it's because it's always different.
It's not the same thing every single time.
Yeah, and it's always different students.
Pilots.
Yeah, different pilots, and you know, I work at a pretty high level. I'm training airline pilots, not new pilots now.
Now, is the simulator a certain plane?
Yes. So they're all this very specific plane make and model. So I train in the Airbus 320 and Airbus 330, which are two separate simulators.
And is that the only plane that those pilots will be able to fly?
Right. So
they're trained on something.
Right.
Excuse me. So if you want to fly a different plane, you have to go through the training first.
Right.
Through a simulator? Is there a simulator for every plane out there?
For every airplane there is.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, certainly. There's even simulators for every, like the smaller 50-seat regional jets. There's even simulators for those.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So how long... Do you have to have a college degree to get a pilot's license or to be a commercial pilot?
To be competitive, like if you want to fly for Delta or American or Southwest, you're going to need a college degree just to be competitive, just to be hired.
So they want that level of expertise or drive or discipline. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't help you, but it just filters out, you know, they have 10,000 applicants or whatever.
Gotcha.
And they only need to hire maybe 300 for the whole year. So, I mean, it kind of helps, you know, sort the stack.
Gotcha. But what about military pilots?
Military pilots.
Does that give you like an in?
It's a little bit of an edge. The military pilots generally have amazing training. So
I require a lot of hours too. Is that a big deal?
It depends. Like fighter pilots actually don't get very many hours.
You're not in the air that long, are you?
Right. So their sorties are generally about an hour and a half. And so, you know, if you're flying a cargo, you know, across the world on the military, you're going to get maybe 30 hours of flight time compared to the guy in the fighter pilot that has an hour and a half. So at that, you know, that same week. So fighter pilots actually can increase their score. I mean, completely legitimate. They're allowed to increase their score for application purposes by 1.25, which still makes them on the lower end.
What does that mean?
Like for every hour they can
do an hour 25 minutes.
Yeah. But I've trained all sorts of pilots, and I've never trained a bad fighter pilot. I mean, they're good.
I mean, you know, that's pretty intense because the guys in the commercial. You know,
it's mostly straight and level. That's what you want.
Sit down and take off and then land, right?
Yeah,
but got to be a lot of boring.
Yeah,
just like everybody else in the back of the plane.
That's what you want. You want as an airline passenger, right? You want the most boring flight.
Right.
I mean, if everybody got off their flight and said that was a boring flight, I think everybody would be happy.
I was on a flight coming back from Australia actually, and I was sitting in the back of the plane, like like last two seats. It was a big plane.
Yeah.
I think it was 747. And the guy sitting next to me, I started talking to him, and he was in the Air Force. And I said, "Oh yeah, what are you doing?" He goes, "I fly a refueler, right?"
Yeah.
And then he goes, "I'm the guy who guides the tube or whatever, the faucet to the other plane." And I said, a friend of my parents, their son does that. And he goes, "Oh, really? What's his name?" And I said, "Well, I know his last name's Veal. I think it's Robert Veal." And he goes, "That's my captain." And I'm like, "No way." And so the whole time I'm looking at him to see if he's nervous because we were hitting some pretty bad weather. And I was in the back of the plane.
Yeah, it's always
a little more intensified.
Right.
Yeah, and he was pretty calm. So.
Yeah.
But what are the odds?
No, it's one of the most unusual conversations I had with a pilot is.
I'm getting thirsty. Pour your wine.
Okay.
This is our secret wine.
He's going
to pour it, and I'm going to answer his questions.
Right. So last week you picked the wine.
I did. It was awesome.
It was awesome.
Cake bread.
It was awesome. So this one is. That one was like one of your all-time favorites last week.
But I also have $12 favorites.
Right. So this one is one of my ones that I always keep on hand, and it's one that I like to have with dinner.
Now the funny thing is it was a screw top.
This one was.
So 20 years ago, I would have gone.
But now
buy some Ripple? Did he Boone's Farm? Are we trying?
No, but
maybe I will do Boone's Farm one day. See if
I don't know
if you like it.
Then we'll just get I'll just walk away with a headache and a stuff
tomorrow morning. Yeah. Oh, what did we have last night? Boone's Farm?
Yeah. But I think you're gonna like this one. So.
I'm not judging your screw top. I'm just
and even the French are using screw tops now.
Oh, everybody is, and sommeliers hate them because it takes away the magic of the cork, and you want to check out. No one's going to hand you a cap. And say,
right.
Oh yeah, it's a great cap.
so this
it's
is
nice and moist inside.
So this is a screw top, but it's I think you're going to think it's a nice screw top. It's my favorite grape, though. That's all I'm going to tell you. It's my favorite grape.
I have no idea what your favorite grape is.
So I'll pour you a little bit of this. And I'll pour myself some.
I'm sort of smelling a Zin.
That is Zin.
Not a cab. It's not the right
cab.
Color.
Yeah, it's not.
So maybe a Merlot color-wise.
It does have a Merlot color, but that's not what it is either.
Yeah, Merlots. Merlots are like a good wine if you don't really know wine. They're generally like. It's hard to find a bad Merlot.
Yeah.
And they're cheap.
They're velvety. Women like Merlots a lot. It hits their palate nice. It seems like I think it's sometimes the Merlots are a little sweeter, but this is not a Merlot.
No. Zinfandel. No, you got me on that.
How about what year?
Yeah, it's a little older because it's not very acidic. So it's at least 5, maybe 7, maybe a little older. But I'm going to go with 7.
So it's actually a 2022.
No fooling.
Yeah.
So this will be awesome in 4 years.
Yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, it's
not hot. It tastes like an older wine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's 3 years old? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we got the variety wrong.
How about the price point?
At $18-20, I'd be like, hey, this is decent wine for that price.
And that's right around what it is, depending on where you buy it. It's right around that $18 to $25.
I will say California.
Definitely California.
Yeah.
I say
that because like Italian wines hit me, and I'm like, and it's more what other wines I don't like.
Yeah.
And I am Californian, so I grew up in California wines. That might be part of it, but overall, I think California wines, maybe some French wines, are also tend to be very good.
Yeah.
This
So
is nice.
I love this grape. And do you ever have these experiences where you're not sure if you love something because of the experience when you first tried it,
Right.
or if it's just because you love it? But this is one, and I'm going to tell a story, and then you're going to know right away what it is. So
go for it.
So on my RV trip, we were coming down from Oregon, and we got into California, and there was a place near Napa and Sonoma and stuff that the locals said, you gotta try this place. And now if you're going to try this place, you better book early because it books up, but they said you book your reservation for sunset, and we were staying
That
at
is
an
not the
Airbnb.
coastline.
Yeah,
Don't get
right,
the mountains.
right. So you're going to the coast. So we were at an Airbnb in Sonoma County,
Okay.
right on the Russian River.
Oh, I was conceived on the Russian River. So my dad tells me. I don't know if he was. It doesn't matter. But he used to always say he worked for Kaiser Engineers up in Auburn.
Okay.
Which is up north of up in the Mountain Sierras.
Yeah.
Not too far from Sonoma.
Yeah.
In that area, maybe a couple hundred miles.
So there's a restaurant called the River's End. And it's where the Russian River meets the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah.
And there's some amazing cliffs there and rock protrusions coming right out of the ocean.
Yeah.
And the River's End restaurant is small. It only has maybe 20 seats, It's just this little thing right off of the Pacific Coast Highway. And you go there, sunset. The sunset sets on the Pacific Ocean as you're sipping, a great wine, looking at this.
So is the restaurant owned by the vineyard, or they just happen to sell this wine?
Well, this is not their wine. That's
no, I
just
mean,
my
it was
story.
but it's not. It was the grape you had. Or
it was
it wasn't the wine vineyard.
So my favorite grape and region is Pinot Noir from the Russian River Valley.
Okay.
So that's my favorite. That's my favorite region specifically, even out of the French ones. And I don't know, like I said, if it's because of the experience I had when I had that, but drinking, a Pinot Noir from the Russian River as I'm sitting watching the Russian River dump into the Pacific Ocean at sunset.
You know what would go really well with this? Is some aged brie.
Well, we got a 1 week old aged brie.
So last week I bought this brie down the street, and it was not ripe at all. And I had very little flavor, so I left it on the counter for a week now.
Yeah.
And it started to mold up on the side, and I've cut that off. And but here, see the difference. One thing I think you'll notice on the difference is the texture as it ripens.
And it's okay just to eat the brine and everything.
I mean, the rind will not hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a little bit distracting to flavor if you don't like it. I just grew up eating it. We didn't really, it's like the peel on a kiwi. Did you know you can eat that?
Everybody peels them off. So
I know, but because it's all hairy, you think it's good. And try it.
Okay.
You'll be like, oh. How do I feel this damn thing? So what do you think of the cheese that got better?
It doesn't even seem like the same cheese as I had last week. And it's been 1 week exactly.
Yeah.
And it has such better dimension. And you just left this on the countertop?
Yeah. Well, when you let it stay warmer, I mean, in the fridge it will, unless you have it frozen, it'll still age, right? Like you could take a pound of Tillamook cheddar and just put it in the back of the fridge, and a year later, now you have aged cheddar. And the price goes up $6, right? Same thing with cheese. Now, if you leave it on the counter where it's room temperature, all the enzymes are really going to town, right? So I guess you could say they're eating the cheese.
Yeah, I guess.
The enzyme, and so as the enzymes do their thing, it's going to make the cheese softer and more flavor, and Bart's just going nuts. I gave him the rind.
Oh, so that's why he's excited about it.
Can I get some more cheese?
Right?
Man, that texture is so different, isn't it?
Yeah. In the it's so much richer.
Yeah. The flavor is a little bit more. Not okay. We won't need all of it.
Yeah, let's do it again.
We'll do some more in a week.
Yeah.
And you'll see that 2 weeks to doing that is. Now you'll get to the point where it'll just cover that whole plate.
How do you know when too long is too long? Like, I don't want to get food poisoning. So when would that be? Or you wouldn't really ever get it?
No, the food poisoning in the cheese would happen in the beginning.
Okay.
So when you make the cheese, you have some bad and good going on in that cheese, right? After I don't know the exact amount of time. I think it's like 6 weeks. All the good enzymes will eat all the bad enzymes.
Oh, okay.
And make the cheese safe.
Okay.
So that is one of the reasons they pasteurize a lot of cheeses in the United States. The problem is the second you pasteurize a cheese, you kill everything.
Sure.
So it will never change its flavor.
Right.
You can leave it on the counter for 2 years. And that mold might not be good for you, right? Because it's not the mold that's in the cheese. It's just molding.
Right.
I'm a big cheese fan. I have relatives lives in France, and I get these farm cheeses from France.
Yeah.
They are incredible. They smell so bad. They look bad.
Yeah.
They just look like something you never eat. And you have to have the palate for it. I don't think most people. It's sort of like, you like sushi?
I like good sushi. I like fresh sushi. I mean,
Do you like uni?
Yeah, I like.
Well, most people do not like uni.
Okay.
They're like, it's
I
like
like
oysters.
almost all of them. Yeah, well, and I love oysters. So
Yeah, I think it's a texture thing.
Sure.
A lot of people are just texture wise. Like,
Yeah.
I hate mushrooms because of the texture. I'm like, you hate mushrooms? What is wrong with you? Okay, so we know this is a 3-year-old Zin. California?
3-year-old Pinot Noir.
Pinot, sorry.
Yeah.
California Pinot. Who's well known for their Pinot? There's so many good Pinots out of California.
Yeah, and this is one in that $20-ish price range. I got this one locally at Kazmeyer's on sale for, I think it was $18.99 or something like that.
Perfect.
So
I like Kazmeyer's. They get a lot of wine down there.
Yeah.
I think I've had every bottle of the bottom row so far. That's how I like some of the names.
Yeah.
Some of the names I think are, I don't know, Fat Bastard.
Oh, yeah. There's an app called Vivino.
Uh-huh.
And you just scan the label, take a photo of the label, and you can even do several of them. So Vivino, we're not sponsored by them yet, but Vivino, you take a picture of the label, and it tells you what the rating is on a scale of 1 to 5. And what I've noticed is if you can get something above like a 3.7, 3.8, that's going to be a good drinking wine. Generally, you can go up. There isn't a lot of high 4s. They're usually low 4s or high 3s. At least the ones I pick up.
There was a tree. I'm sure he's still there in Vegas. I think his name was Curtis. And on Sundays, he would have these like wine afternoon parties. And I usually would cook something, for the group. And there was one guy, a photographer, as a matter of fact, he loved to go find $10 bottle of wine. Now, in today's money, that was like a $20 bottle of wine. That's not too shabby to spend on a bottle of wine. And Curtis also knew 2 or 3 sommeliers in Las Vegas. Well, if you're at a big casino, you probably buy $50 million in wine every year.
Right.
You know, insane. So they give these guys insane bottles of wine.
Yeah, yes.
So these guys would show up with $10,000 bottles of wine, and we'd drink it next to the $10 bottle of wine. And a couple times, the $10 bottle of wine beat the $10,000 bottle of wine. It was just, you realize that it just because it's 10,000 means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and that's what the sommeliers say. They say, you know, I mean, wine is an individual. You know, what you like might not be so far we've liked the same, but
well, that's because we have really good taste. But there are a lot of people obviously who don't, and that's why they have whites in. And you know, Merlot's a good starter wine. You know, if you don't know wines and you want to try, there is a tremendous amount of snobbery in wine, and I think that probably turns off a lot of people from even trying or intimidated.
I think intimidation, because when the snobbery starts, they start throwing out like, you know, all these adjectives and tasting notes, and you know what.
This wine definitely got better as we drank it.
And
the cheese actually.
Yeah, and this one is nice too. Do you ever use an aerator?
I have one.
Okay, it's really nice because I think it's a younger wine, a 2022. I think pouring it through an aerator really opens it up quick, and it doesn't. You know, you can't do that to a 6-year-old wine that, you know, I mean, it kind of messes up. But this one actually tastes really nice through an aerator, kind of opens it up a little bit.
I have one. We'll grab it in a sec. I actually met a master sommelier in Las Vegas. It was at a convention. And we brought up aerator. I don't know why. And she's like, yeah, those things are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So she endorsed them.
Yeah.
And I have some friends that are avid aerators. It doesn't matter the wine. They run it through. And I don't know. I mean, maybe next show we'll do a blind taste test. So I'll give you 2 glasses of wine. One will go through the aerator, and then see if you can if what you like better.
Right. And this one here has only been open for like 30 minutes. So one of my friends is a sommelier, and he says that, you know, he'll open it like 3 hours in advance, pour out just like a little bit,
get more surface area,
and then let it like open and air out for a while. You know, at a restaurant, I mean, you're not going to order your bottle of wine and they're like, okay, we'll have that ready for you in 3 hours.
Right.
You know,
I years ago, I bought, this was back in the 80s, I bought a bottle of Opus One. And Opus One wasn't that big of a deal in the 80s. Yeah. It was probably a $45 bottle of wine. Yeah. Now it's, you know, $1,200 bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And I drank it with someone. We each had a glass. And that's all we had. And the next day, we each had a glass. And we're like, is that the same wine? It was so much better the next day.
Yeah.
It was literally 10 times better. Oh, Bart.
Is that Ocean? Well, you can just pause.
No, it's probably the neighbors over.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So. Just their dogs aren't out barking.
Oh. So yeah, but let's talk a little bit about you. You mentioned you used to cook for some of these wine dinners and stuff. So at an early age, 20 years old, were you when you went out to Los Angeles area?
No, I was 18 when I applied to culinary school.
Oh, nice.
I applied to CIA, which is in Hyde Park, New England, which is up in Vermont, in Montpelier, and California Culinary Academy, which was in San Francisco. And I was living in Diablo, which is about 40 miles due east of San Francisco.
Okay.
And I had a girlfriend, and I was living in my parents' guest house, which was not some insane guest house. It was a little tiny shack, but it was my shack, right? And my friends would come over, and I was like, why do I want to go to Montpelier or,
Right.
or Hyde Park and freeze my tush off while I could stay here with a girlfriend and guest house and drive to school every day? So when I started at CCA, I was 19.
Oh, sorry,
Franklin.
I picked him up. Maybe you picked him up wrong. It's fine. He's good. He's
No cheese for you, Frankie.
Should I put him down? I thought he would sit.
Yeah, he might.
Okay.
Franklin, sit down. No. Was that a no?
He's like, no, I don't think so. Oh, there he is. There he is. There he is. So
he lied down.
Yeah.
So CCA was great. Excuse me. The school was actually started by this lady who had the hardest time getting help in San Francisco. So she started culinary school. So she called the culinary school and go, I need help. Because she had all these parties and stuff all the time.
Right.
And her dad was a guy named Magnan, and he had these really high-end clothing stores called Magnans in the Bay Area. And when I started this school, I think I was the youngest student ever accepted.
Oh, wow.
Now, in the 80s, nobody thought to be a chef as a profession.
And maybe not in the U.S., but I mean, like over in,
It wasn't a profession that people looked up to. Let's put it that way.
Okay, sure. That makes sense.
Probably in Europe, yes. I think you're correct.
Yeah.
In the United States, people didn't go to a restaurant in the 80s because of who the chef was.
Right.
In most cases.
Right.
There were a few in California, like San Francisco, there was Jeremiah Towers. In Berkeley, there was Alice Waters. She was a really famous chef. But it wasn't, let's put it this way. Everybody at boarding school went, why am I throwing my life away? John, why are you throwing your life away? And I'm like, what do you mean? You're going to culinary school. In hindsight, it was the right move.
Yeah. And
it opened so many doors.
Right.
And my mom always said, everybody eats.
Yeah, absolutely. And, back then, you didn't really hear about Michelin stars. And so at least at my level, I mean, like... well,
there are hardly any Michelin restaurants in the United States.
Yeah. But now there's several, right?
Right, but in the 80s, there were. There might have been a few in New York, maybe Chicago, and there's probably not that many more now. There's not a lot of Michelin star restaurants,
right?
Especially when you get into, I think, 4 or 5 stars. I mean, there's a handful of restaurants.
Right.
I've eaten in one Michelin guide restaurant.
I've eaten in one in Chicago, and it was expensive. The food was great. Small portions, beautifully plated. You know what I mean? It's exactly what it was like you were eating exactly what you saw in a magazine.
Yeah,
you know
right.
what I mean? But it was unusual. I think if I wanted to eat at a Michelin star restaurant, I probably should have picked like a French restaurant. Because that would have been, I think, next level.
So what kind of restaurant was it?
It was, believe it or not, in Chicago, and I don't even remember the name anymore, there is a Michelin-rated Mexican restaurant.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I would go.
It was great. It was great.
Sure.
But I mean,
it was expensive.
But the bill, the bill is about the only thing that
you don't get a Michelin star without spending $20,000 on your bathroom.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, those guys come in and they check for gum under the table. Make sure that the waiter's tie is on. The Michelin guide is not just food.
Yeah, I didn't realize
they have a lot of scoring. I've never looked at how they score. I know it's pretty intense. I've eaten in one 4-star restaurant. I don't think it exists anymore because I recommended it to a friend who was going to France and she couldn't find it. But it's called L'Espérance, which is the experience.
Oh, okay.
L'Espérance. And it was in Vézelay, which is south of Paris. And at the time, it was before the euro.
Oh.
And for whatever reason, the American dollar against the franc was so strong. It was 12 francs to the dollar, which was like insane.
Yeah.
Like you could buy like French designer shoes for $30.
Yeah, yeah.
And a beautiful shirt for $10, $15. And we went in there. It was my parents' anniversary. Never heard of the place. Dad asked somebody at a kiosk, looking at a map, where would you go for dinner? And he said, oh, this place, you got to try. So we made reservations. 4 of us, I think we had 22 courses. Between appetizer and dessert, 22 courses. And the bill for 4 people came to $350.
For 22 courses. That's insane.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
it,
now that would cost you thousands.
Yeah, yeah.
At a Michelin Guide restaurant.
Right.
4 or 5 star.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah. That's cool. There was a restaurant in the Seattle area.
Seriously. Do you really want to be on?
They want to be on YouTube
Sit
also.
Down. Sit down, Bart.
So,
Bart, sit down.
So, welcome to Buckeye TV.
Yeah.
This is our co-host.
Dog's Red Wine.
So, I had an 8-course breakfast one time at the Salish Lodge. Yeah.
You just don't think of that for breakfast.
Right.
Courses,
And it was right. And it was.
I've never had more than 1 course at a breakfast.
Right. So that was probably the best breakfast I've ever had, but it was like incredibly too much food.
Breakfast. I admit I've had some big breakfasts, and it is generally big.
Yeah.
I like chicken fried steak or biscuits and gravy, which are very filling. But I'm done for the day. I usually don't eat dinner if I have breakfast.
Yeah.
If I go out.
Right.
I mean, it's one thing, a piece of toast and an egg here.
Yeah.
But if I go out, it's always some giant plate.
Right. And this was 20 years ago. I don't know if the Salish Lodge even still exists, but right in that Seattle area. And it was incredible. I remember like everybody was like, you could tell everybody at the table was like stuffed. It was like the 7th course. And then on the 8th course was pancakes.
The most stuffing thing at the end.
It was like
not a thin mint, right? From Monty Python. Yeah. Don't you want just a thin mint? What's the? But I guess people like it, or
it was amazing. Yeah, I mean, and it was.
So was it breakfasty stuff? Like, did they bring you out a sausage?
Yeah,
and
it was like right, yeah, exactly. It was like, well, I can't.
It could have all gone on one plate. That's my question.
Yeah, if you were at Bob Evans, they would have put it all on one plate.
And lost all their stars.
Right. So, but that was a fun experience. But I want to know more about. So you're 18 years old. You get into the culinary school.
Yeah.
And how long does that take?
It was 2 years. It was 8 hours a day.
Wow.
So that's probably like 4-year college.
Yeah,
I don't think you do 8 hours a day in college.
No, definitely.
I don't know.
No, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
And then junior semester and senior semester, I waited on tables. Mm-hmm. So I took the first BART train into the city.
Yeah. Which
is like 4:30 or something in the morning. And the last train out of the city.
Wow.
Which is around midnight. So, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Culinary school was tough.
Yeah.
And especially in those days, it was pretty much run by European chefs.
Okay.
And they were not nice people.
Yeah.
They sexually harassed every single female student. And in those days, the girls just batted their eyes and got better grades, It was pretty much how it went down. Most of the people I went to school with couldn't cook. when we started.
Wow. So they just had
They were
a passion
changing
for it?
professions.
Okay.
Or they got divorced. They needed some income. The only ones that could cook were professional, and they were chefs in my eyes. In hindsight, they were already chefs.
Yeah.
But Marriott wouldn't give them an executive chef position because they didn't have a degree.
Sure.
So they needed a degree for the pay.
Right.
So that was they didn't need the degree to be better at cooking.
Right.
So I think you have people who are just naturally good cooks, and I would put myself in that category. But I also grew up in a culinary family, so they didn't ask me if I wanted to cook something. I just cooked things.
Right.
Where my brother and sister, they never cooked anything.
Right.
And they didn't have that passion. And both my parents loved to cook.
Yeah.
My grandmother loved to cook.
I love to cook. I was lucky enough that my mom recognized my passion for cooking. And so there was, she would enroll me in these cooking classes. And sometimes I was like, this 10-year-old kid in this like adult cooking class. And they're like, I guess it was fine, but they would look at me and it's like, okay, and,
what are you doing here?
Right.
Kid?
But it was like, my mom would drop me off, and it was usually at the basement of some, place or something, but it had a bunch of, but my question is, so I just had an interest in cooking, and I love to cook, and I would explore cooking. But so are you considered a chef then because you graduated from the Institute?
It's different how I call people chefs versus what the public may call chefs. So the public thinks that a culinary degree makes you a chef.
Right.
I would say that's not true. Okay. And I also would say you don't have to have a culinary degree or any degree to be a chef. And if I had a kid like Ocean who she's pretty damn good in the kitchen. She's good for you too. Yeah. Right? And if she said, Dad, I want to go to culinary school, it wouldn't be the cost that I'd say no. She wanted to go later, I'd pay for it. But I would say go to the best restaurant in Perrysburg, and I don't care if you have to start off as a dishwasher or a prep cook doing salad. Get in there under a great chef.
Yeah.
Because it makes more sense to me to get paid to learn
rather than paid
to learn, right?
Sure.
And culinary schools, CCA did have some running restaurants. So production made, dinner for the public. Garde Manger, which is the salads and terrines, they would do the buffets, a couple times a week. And, you're making stuff all week for that. Like a terrine you might do on Monday for a Friday's buffet.
Because there was so much?
But you're doing, no, because classical French cooking takes forever to make.
Oh, wow, okay.
You're not just pumping food out.
Yeah.
And classical French a terrine it maybe has 20 steps.
Oh, wow.
And 15 ingredients.
Right.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's very tasty and rich and everything. But you learn the basics of anything classical. Mm-hmm. Guitar, piano, or painting. Yeah. And you can paint anything. Yeah. You can play anything. Yeah. Right? Same thing with the culinary world. You learn how to make sauce all the different ways. You learn how to cook meat all the different ways. So it doesn't matter if you're looking at a Mexican recipe or a French recipe or Italian. It doesn't matter because the techniques are all the same. In my experience, the only food that really has like different rules is Thai.
Okay. What makes Thai different?
Well, perfect example, I was going to make pad Thai for a date. And I was a little arrogant, and I didn't read the recipe. I just looked at the ingredients like I normally do. And one of the things in pad thai are these Thai sticks or the rice sticks, right?
Right.
And there are noodles, and in my head I'm thinking boil the noodles. Well, if you want a clump of boil those noodles, actually what you do is you soak them in hot water.
Okay.
Then you drain them and you sort of stir fry them into your pad thai. Well, these came out so bad. And it also includes fish sauce. Now, fish sauce is sort of like a martini.
Yeah.
You just use a tiny, tiny bit of vermouth, right?
Right.
Now, a lot of vermouth, you ruin the martini.
Right.
Well, I'm like, so between the glomp and the fish sauce, we ordered pizza.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So how do I classify a chef? You just know it.
Okay. So,
a great example is Farnsworth.
yeah.
You know, Josh is not classically trained at all. He's an engineer.
Okay. Yeah, he never went to culinary school.
But
he's a restaurant
he's got
owner.
the feeling, and
And
I'll put his food at the top of my list to everything I've had in this area.
yeah. And it's pretty incredible because that's somebody that has passion.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you take somebody like Josh at Farnsworth, and you have somebody that, regardless, let's say they only learn cooking from their mom, and then develop the passion. But his passion has got him to. He's a restaurant owner operator where he's in the kitchen. He's running the day-to-day business. He has this, unique boutique restaurant that's packed always.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we know that, don't we?
Yeah, right? So
he's got everything going at every level.
Right.
He really, it's a home run.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a chef, it's beautiful to see.
Yeah. I agree.
I love to see that level of success. And I love, we're not in the most sophisticated culinary area of the country.
Right.
It has grown up a lot, I would say, in the last 20 years in this area. My dad's number one complaint when he first moved to Perrysburg is he couldn't find bread with a crust. Now they got baguettes, all the Italian bread.
Yeah.
You go to the local place and they got a variety, but that was the sophistication of the demand.
Yeah.
And this area's grown up. The population has blossomed. With that, people are like, okay, I'll try opening this restaurant. And thank goodness they will.
It's interesting.
It's such a stab in the dark of success is just so difficult in this business.
Yeah. And the profit margins are so narrow, right? I mean, in the restaurant business?
If you have profits.
Okay. That right?
I would say, I don't know I'm making this up, but I would guess overall, across the country, 80% of restaurants are not making it.
And is that why there's so much turnover? I mean,
well, there's like I think after a few years, there's like a 90% is the number, but I don't know if that number is accurate because it doesn't reflect if I sold my restaurant to you. Mm-hmm. If I sold my restaurant to you, it's considered a failure in those numbers.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's really a fair thing. It's just a tough business with a lot of variables. And in the United States, anyone can open a restaurant.
Right.
If you have the money to pay the health department and the building department, get the permits and all that, you can open a restaurant. Now in France, if I went, they'd let me because I have a culinary degree.
Okay.
You could be a billionaire, they won't let you.
Okay.
No, maybe it's changed. Maybe they're loosened up, but generally the Europeans won't let you open. They take food so seriously that they're like,
Now you'll lose little pallets, you know.
And the one thing when I was traveling a lot, something that Germans, for one, travel more than anybody I've ever met.
They love hot places too.
but the one complaint that they had is, and they were almost in disbelief. They're like, we can't believe that Americans don't care where their food comes from. And they're like, we can trace it in Germany. We know what farm it came from, you know? Yeah, we know where.
Not only that, they I think last year or maybe the year before, they don't even have to say it's imported from another country in the United States anymore.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
so you really don't have any idea where your meats come from.
And it's kind of a issue that concerns me because I had cancer. I mean, don't necessarily know the cause of it, you know, but I mean, but I like to eat healthy and, you know, live a healthy lifestyle. What concerns me is,
if you didn't, you probably wouldn't be sitting there.
Right. But what's interesting to me is we consume things in the United States that
are illegal.
In Mexico, even. So,
oh my God!
Yeah. So people think of. I mean, some people.
You can get trichinosis in Mexico. Right? We haven't had it here for 40 years.
But guess what? You can't drink Diet Coke in Mexico because it's illegal because it's so toxic. Diet Coke.
Well, they're considering it toxic.
Well, it's banned. I mean, when we would fly down to Mexico City.
You already had the Diet Coke on the plane.
But coming back, we'd have Coke Light. Different formula.
Huh.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
But
Kennedy, who is maybe going to be ahead of the FDA, you know, he's been going on. He's an attorney who's sued a lot of companies, you know, for this kind of stuff. And, you know, it's amazing we have dyes.
Yeah, I mean,
that are illegal in France.
Can you even export U.S. beef to Asia? I don't think you can, which seems odd. I mean, I don't think you can there are certain places that won't accept U.S. beef, which my grandparents were cattle farmers in South Dakota. Back then, it was like true Angus beef cattle. I mean, they knew what they fed their cattle. They knew
grass fed,
and they would rotate pastures, so their cattle was always like grass fed.
Yeah.
And I remember it. I mean, took such care in their cattle. On one of the drives on my trip, and we did some documentation of it. I mean, just from the roadside, but we saw thousands of cattle standing, you know, ankle deep in their own shit and
eating corn,
probably GMO corn.
Yeah, excuse me. One of the things I've learned about excuse me. One of the things I've learned about beef is, you know, most beef goes to a stockyard.
Yeah.
And they try to fatten them up before they're sold. And so they go on a pretty much bad diet, which includes corn.
Right. Well,
and the corn diet versus the grass diet is the difference between good beef and bad beef for your body. So if they're not eating grass up to the day they die,
yeah,
they can be eating grass for a couple of years. Then they go on that corn diet, and the stockyard, that undoes the goodness of the beef.
Right.
Because overall, I think beef is probably healthy for you.
Right. And you have to watch out for ones that say grass-fed versus grass-finished. Grass-finished really is just...
the opposite?
Yeah. You know, it's like... there's a place around here. I don't know if it's I won't give too much details, but we could buy a share of the cattle, and we could get raw milk. We could get grass-fed beef, and we could circumnavigate some of the FDA stuff because we had a share of the
I see. Since you're an owner, they can't regulate what you do with your own meat.
Right.
Gotcha.
But it was pretty amazing. One of my favorite drinks ever is raw milk.
I've never had raw milk, and I know the government was going after the Amish. And they just won that case, or
the Amish did, or the
Amish did.
Good,
and because they were trying to shut them down, and there are no other people on the face of Earth who go leave me alone than the Amish,
right, exactly.
So if you're bugging them, you're going out of your way,
right,
to force modern baloney on some people. You know what? They're not dying of
usually very healthy.
Yeah.
But so I have 4 daughters, and so we would get this milk. Right?
I have one.
Everybody feels.
I have one daughter. I'm in.
But
and you don't have gray hair.
The milk would still come, and they would still put it in a plastic jug, but my daughters would fight over that raw milk plug.
Really?
Because there would be like
the cream on top.
The cream on top of that raw milk.
I lived in Australia in the 70s, and they have what they call magpies, which are blackbirds, really, I think. And it was still bottled delivery for milk, right?
Yeah.
And you either had like a compartment for the milkman to put the bottles in, or these caps that went on top, because they had a little silver thing, right? A little foil top. And the magpies would poke through the hole and just suck the cream out, which is really the best part. You put that in your coffee, right?
Right. Well, I'll get us some.
Well, it's funny you have access. I've been wanting to make some cheese.
Oh,
and I think raw milk is the best cheese to make.
So good. It is. Okay, you can taste the grass because they're grass-fed cattle too, right? These people are like.
Is this Amish milk?
No, it's not Amish. It's a local farmer that you can like be part of their community or whatever.
Gotcha.
But and they have a farm visit every year where I guarantee you there's not a cleaner, more respected farm anywhere in the area. You go there. Why the government bugs them? It's like the same as the Amish. It's annoying.
They don't have anything else to do.
Yeah, they like to cause trouble, but whatever. So, but the you can actually taste the grass in the milk, which you might think because I don't know if you drink.
Sounds a little weird, but
actually, you have this cream plug on top. That my girls used to, and then you pour it into a glass. And you drink it, and it's like, that doesn't taste like any other milk I've ever had. It's like...
Why did you buy it in the first place? What?
Because pasteurized milk is pretty unhealthy.
Okay, so it was
full of hormones.
So it was a healthy... health.
Yeah, well,
you doing some research, or
I don't think. Sorry if you're watching it, but my oldest daughter, when she was very young, started developing early, and unusually early.
As a kid, I had a friend's brother who was like, "Yeah, the reason girls are developing early is because of milk. All the hormones in milk." You think that's true?
That's what the pediatrician just swore.
Really?
She's like
the hormones in milk are making your daughter...
Absolutely. And she said, one of the worst things for you. And she's like, get off of it.
So it was a commercial milk that uses hormones.
It was
for production of the milk, or what?
It was not it wasn't Horizon organic certified. You know, we're talking, 18 years ago,
Bob's
16
milk.
years ago. Well, it was like, off the grocery store,
Sure,
2%
yeah.
whole milk or whatever it was, and the pediatrician said, get her off the milk. And we did. And, soy has things too that have artificial estrogen. So you're not supposed to do soy.
Yeah, I don't
but
like soy much
no,
myself.
but we had the opportunity to. I mean, I don't even remember how we came across the farm, but they offered a share of their farm where you could get like grass-fed organic beef, pork.
Do you still do this?
I don't now because my family isn't as big, so, back then I had 4 growing daughters, a family of 6. And so, I mean, we could buy a quarter of beef and a half of pork. And
Maybe we should go in on it with a couple other people.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's really amazing because you taste the difference and the leanness of, yeah. I'll say
I have found overall meat around Ohio versus California or Nevada is just better, especially beef. Mm-hmm. It's just better. There's a cheap steak here is 10 times better than cheap steak in California.
And my grandparents had it wasn't just a cattle. They had a working farm in South Dakota with it's different around here. They had sections of land, and I believe a section is a mile by a mile, so a square mile.
Wow.
Right. So out there, land is different, right? So they had several
land and
several sections of land. So the cattle would graze, and they would even have enough land that they could rotate pastures. So well, they're done grazing here. We're going to move them to pasture 2 or pasture 3. And that wasn't the only thing they did. They also they rotated corn with alfalfa or grains and stuff like that. It was a big South Dakota farm. But my grandma was the one that taught me. They were part of the Cattlemen's Club and, or Cattlemen's Association, and having that amazing beef. I remember for a long time, until recently when I was, started buying, grass-fed beef and different beef, I'm like, beef doesn't have a flavor anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Like if you don't get if you have to season your beef to get the flavor of the seasoning, you probably shouldn't be eating that steak. I mean, true beef, true grass-fed.
Well,
good
also
beef.
aged.
Yeah, aged. Nice.
I don't think most people realize, but you can't eat fresh killed beef.
Right.
It's got to age a little bit before to talk about no flavor.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it is. They're rushing the beef out so fast.
Yeah.
They're not aging it.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like cheese. The enzymes in the beef add to the flavor.
Right. And that's why you go to a high-end steakhouse like Mancy's or something like that. They'll say, well, this is
aged beef. And some restaurants are insane about it. 1 year aged beef, wrapped in salt, all these different things.
When I lived in Miami Beach, they had an Italian restaurant, just a local small place, and it had like the shanks hanging in the and aging just out in the open air. I mean?
Well, that's what you got to do. You got to keep the air moving and cold, and let the same as cheese.
Yeah. Well, let's save that. So you ready to know what the wine is?
Okay, just give me the first letter.
M. Pinot Noir.
It's ringing absolutely 0 bells. So I'll be honest with you.
A 20. We'll say it's a $20 bottle of wine. Sometimes up to 30 if but California Pinot Noir 2022.
I say Pinot Noir just to piss people off. I actually say pot pourri. That really pisses people off. You pretend you don't know any French. Oh, I use pot pourri all the time. So that smells great.
So,
ma'am, I not ringing any bells.
When I pulled the label off, it's super common, and do you like it?
No, I do like it. There is one that everybody likes. It's a tan label.
Yeah.
I see it all the time.
You see it all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
So we're gonna take the label off.
See if I'm right.
You're right.
I made you right, but
so
I didn't really guess it. You gave me too many hints. Some ways you can go. Oh, that's a Naomi.
Yeah.
Oh, Naomi. Is it Naomi?
Yeah, it's Naomi.
I always thought it was Naomi. Okay,
yeah, Naomi.
Yeah, it is. It is a guy. I've ordered this a few times.
Yeah.
It's a good wine.
It's a nice Pinot Noir. It's easy drinking. It's got nice legs.
Even if she doesn't have good legs, you drink a bottle of Pinot and she'll have good legs. That's my.
But it's a beautiful.
You can't go wrong.
Right. I mean, you're not going to pour this bottle for anyone if they're a wine snob, if they don't like wine. I mean, it's a really nice balanced wine from California that I think that anybody's going to like.
I agree.
I could give my mom, who's a white Zinfandel drinker, or I could bring this to Thanksgiving and she's like, oh, I like that, and I could give it to my friend that's a sommelier and he'd probably like, oh, that's nice. You know what I mean, it's just for $20.
You cheap bastard.
right. I'm like, but
I'm a sommelier and you bring me a $20 bottle of wine.
With a screw top.
Yeah, with a screw top.
So
wrapped in paper. You're so ashamed of it.
But one thing I love about this wine, if you want to impress your date, you don't need a corkscrew for this. So that makes
so you don't look silly if you don't have.
Well, no, I'm just saying like picnics, or you could put it in your checked luggage on an airplane or something like that.
Good point.
And you get there to whatever, and you open up the bottle of wine on a little blanket or whatever, and I think it's a beautiful $20 bottle of wine.
It is.
Not
you did well. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to you doing well. And I already know what I'm going to do next wine.
Okay.
I'm just not going to tell you.
All right.
And I will give you one hint.
Okay.
It's not going to be California.
Okay. Sounds good. And so we'll jump ahead 2 weeks, and I'm going to switch it up completely.
As long as
I'm going to do.
You can do white, but I would like 3 white wines.
No. I'm going to do something way different. I'm going to do some of the most rare bourbon on the planet.
Do we need cigars?
We can go to my place. And then we can smoke cigars inside in the lounge. Yeah,
or sit outside in the freezing cold.
Yeah. But so next week, non-California. Week after that, I promise you, it'll be a bourbon. Unfortunately, that you probably can't buy in a store.
Which. That's fine because I would never buy bourbon anyway, so I might as well have one that is considered what you would consider really good bourbon. Because I'm not going to have the palate you have with bourbon.
All right.
I haven't had. I sort of like the buzz from bourbon. It does. It has a nice, warm, mellow buzz.
Do you know how to taste wine, obviously?
Yeah.
So there's a way to taste bourbon also. I know you. but I mean, there's a way to taste bourbon, and maybe just like you haven't had like these $100+ bottles of bourbon.
I have.
Okay.
There was a charity event last year in Toledo, and I was like, oh, I should get out and meet. I've been trying to get a girl for a while, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I'll go to this charity event. So they sat me to the bar with a gay guy on each side. So that messed up that part of it. And then I'm drinking these bourbons, right? And I don't know a good one. And so they gave the cheap ones in the beginning, and then you go, oh, now this one.
I would have done the opposite.
Well, yeah, because your palate goes down.
Yeah.
The more you drink, the less discerning your palate becomes.
Right. And
I was so schwacked by dessert.
Yeah.
Because I can't handle that much bourbon.
No.
I didn't even stay for the cigars. I got my Uber and went home.
Yeah. No. So my favorite go-to bourbon is Maker's 46, which is a reasonably priced, bourbon and very common. But I always like to have my first bourbon of the night, which I don't have like more than 2 or 3, but my first bourbon of the night is always like one of these unique pours. I have a really nice selection of.
Might as well. I mean,
right?
the first one is.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like after that first one, I'm just going to Makers,
My dad, and he's gone, and all the people he did this to are gone as well. But they were party animals. Both my parents had parties at least once a month. And some of them, like Chinese New Year, I don't know why Chinese New Year was so big, but they would have 50 people over, which isn't huge, but my dad would do 20 courses of Chinese food. And he would do New Year's toasting. So champagne, you do the first champagne, and then the second round was hard apple cider. And no one noticed.
Oh, really?
No, you know what? You've been drinking all night, and someone gives you things with bubbles that looks like champagne. And pretty much, I mean, hard apple cider tastes pretty much like champagne.
Right.
And it's a good copy, and it was, I don't know, $2 or $3 of all those days. My dad had money, but he could also be pretty cheap. I mean, plus he just fed 50 people.
Yeah, right. So
20 courses.
So, well, thank you.
This was fun.
This was fun, right?
Yeah.
Bart. Bart Franklin's. You can't see him, but he's all camped out.
Totally over there.
He's sleeping. So
of course, Bart's got to be involved,
right?
Because we don't want him to be, so he is. Cheese is pretty good. We got enough for next week.
Yeah. I'm excited.
And we'll match it with the wine.
Okay.
It'll be a good match. Actually.
All right.
The perfect match.
All right.
I don't know. You'll know why next week.
Nice.
Thank you, everybody, for watching us. And welcome to Dog's Red Wine. It's our second episode. I think we're getting into the groove of this.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week, everybody.
See you next week. Cheers.